everyone. Welcome to News and Brews Sports Biz, our podcast series that advocates for the financial voices in college athletics and features new developments impacting the business of college sports. I'm Katie Davis.
And I'm Ken Kurtzel. Joining us today is Ben Broussard, the Senior Associate Athletic Director at NC State and Executive Director of the Wolfpack Club. Welcome, Ben. Ben, tell us a little bit about your history in the industry and the career path that got you to where you are today.
I appreciate that, Ken. So I am originally from South Louisiana. I did an internship while I was a grad student at LSU with the PGA of North Texas. While I was with the PGA of North Texas in grad school, I met a bunch of really, really great people that introduced me to some parts of the sports marketing world that I previously didn't know anything about. And it was a really nice experience. Took my first job out of college working with that group, trying to raise sponsorship dollars for golfers that were trying to make the PGA and LPGA tour. When I got a phone call from a grad school classmate of mine, the Tiger Athletic Foundation was looking to hire a development officer. Interviewed for the job, didn't get it. They gave it to a former football player who actually caught the earthquake touchdown pass when LSU played Auburn late 80s.
Wow.
And then I was okay with that, right? I mean, he was probably more qualified and a better person for that job. But as the world works, 3 months later, he got scooped up by a pharma company to sell some drug. And I got a call from Major General Ron Richard, who was running the Athletic Foundation, and he offered me that job. As the world works, I started January 1, 2004. And about 5 days later, LSU won its first football national championship in the Superdome versus Oklahoma in 50 years. And so I was a very, very popular person in my job. And I think that sort of set the pace for me moving forward with what we were able to do. So starting there, I was able to grow in my career. I had a lot of really fortunate people placed in front of me that helped me get better at my job. And that led me to where I am today.
Well, that's certainly a great way to start your career. Like you said, getting to fundraise directly off a national championship. You couldn't ask for a better role for a chief fundraiser. So.
Yeah, and as the chief fundraiser for the Wolfpack, let's talk a little bit about the other side of the coin of when maybe there's not as much success. And of course, we've seen with the pandemic that has really put a wrench in any kind of plans anyone has for success as a team. And especially NC State has seen this. Talk to us about the day your football bowl game was canceled. And what you felt like you had to do for your student athletes and your donors who attended the game, especially given this is the second time you've been significantly impacted by COVID in a high-profile postseason competition.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that second part, because I don't think you could answer the football question without alluding to what happened in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
To Elliott and that baseball program. The thing about NC State that I learned very, very quickly is I'm not sure that there's a more passionate but dedicated fan base to their program than NC State is. NC State is a school where people grow up in this state, and they're very, very proud of what's been achieved here. They're very proud of the degree that they can get from this institution, and they're very proud of the role that this institution plays in the state of North Carolina. But to answer your question, when we were in Omaha and COVID caused some issues with our baseball team, and we were forced to play a very, very good Vanderbilt team with 13 players, right? We had 3 players playing out of position. Our All-American pitcher played first base and went 3 for 4 nonetheless that day. But it was a very NC State reaction from our fan base, right? Because they were proud that our guys showed up. And that they still represented the institution in the finest way possible, and that they didn't give up. Because very easily, Elliott could have made a decision that I'm not putting, my All-American pitcher at first base just so we can play this game. But he basically said, and I'm going to steal a line, but he basically said, we're not going to give up, right? And that's a Toronto NC State line that rings true at this place. So they gave it their best. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that had the NCAA allowed that baseball team to play the next day, with 9 players, they'd have played, right? They'd have played. So fast forward to San Diego, and we're scheduled to play UCLA. The night before, we had a really big contingent that made it out there to include the players and the family of the players. And that's a long trip from Raleigh, North Carolina to Southern California. And everybody was excited to be there. The bowl committee was amazing to us. The Holiday Bowl was, all the festivities around it. It's one of the best bowls in America. And we were ready to go. We had breakfast that morning. Our fan base was sort of making their way over to the ball game when we got, and I think most of our fan base found out on Twitter, but when we got the news that, that UCLA wasn't going to be a play in that ball game. And as you can imagine, the majority of our fan base, with a few expletives, said, "Oh no, not again!" Right? We can't believe this is going to happen to us again. Our athletic director and our football coach did an amazing job communicating to our student athletes, letting them know what the situation was and that we were going to do anything and everything possible to find another opponent. But that late in the bowl season, that far, on the West Coast, it just wasn't an option to get another opponent out there. And our fan base really appreciated the fight that Boo and Dave put up on their behalf to show that we were doing everything we could to play, that we're going to play that game regardless. And our fans are resilient, right? They really, really are. And Katie, to your question, the thing about this job that I took during the pandemic is, people say, how difficult must that have been? And I'll say that there are some blessings of starting in a pandemic, right? I mean, I had the opportunity as a new guy to reach out to all of these folks and get to spend probably more time than I would have spent with them had it all been in person, right? It's a little bit easier to get a Zoom meeting right when you start. And so to really dive into some of my constituents and donors, there were some blessings to the fact that we had to do this during a pandemic.
Yeah. So with the way the bowl game shook out, it was a cancellation as opposed to being a W, as far as a postseason win. Is there any kind of impact, whether it's, financial from, what you get of coming out of the bowl, or even just being able to market the fact that you were successful in the postseason, and how that impacts how your donors give?
There's two answers to that question. Yes, there's a significant financial impact. Some of the payouts that you would get from the game, from the ticket sales, from the television contract, that doesn't happen. So you certainly are exposed to a loss that you've got to figure out. Our conference has been really, really great in helping us, work through that. And so we're not going to lose as big a number as we thought we would on that, but there will be a loss there. And so that's unfortunate. From our donor standpoint, from our fan standpoint, they love the fact that our team was there. They love the fact that our team was ready to play, was willing to play, and that they were going to make it happen under any set of circumstances. And that's a very NC State thing. The $2 billion campaign that just wrapped up on NC State's campus, the motto was "Think and Do" for that campaign. And that's who NC State people are, right? They get things done. They use their hands. And the fact that, there was a little bit more adversity, they embraced the fact that our football coach and our football players were there. They were prepared to represent us in the best way possible. So our fan base handled the football piece better than they did the baseball piece. The baseball piece really hit home because, we had a chance to win a national championship, and unfortunately we didn't get to compete for it.
Yeah, no, that was heartbreaking. And, but it's encouraging, like you said, the reaction from your fan base and your boosters, to just the attitude really that the teams conveyed in both of those situations. So if COVID has been one of obviously the dominant topic affecting the world and the sports world the last couple of years, I would say, easily number two right now is NIL. And of course, we know that NIL is kind of the Wild West right now, with a patchwork of laws between different states. And as we've seen in some states, like Ohio, for instance, Ohio State has now explicitly come out and talked about how they are going to be involved in helping athletes set up NIL deals. What do you see in that, and like how that affects you for coordinating with boosters and just the whole gamut there of what that brings into play for you?
Well, I don't know, in my 17-year career here, I don't know if there's ever been a more interesting topic, disruptive topic than NIL, because I believe that what the NCAA thought they were doing and what has evolved into are not quite the same. And so, we're getting a lot of questions early on from donors, from boosters, from student athletes that says, tell me exactly what I can do. And we've got a great compliance team here that does everything they can to make sure that we don't get ourselves in a bad spot with the NCAA. And so we provided all of the guidance early on, and then the landscape it quickly began to change. And just to the things that you alluded to what Ohio State has done, what Texas has done, even Florida right there in your backyard. I mean, you've seen a number of places put out, their plans that get a big group of people together that find ways to collectively market NIL deals to their current student athletes and the future student athletes. And so we are, as we speak, we are right in the middle of figuring out exactly what our next steps are going to be. And there's a number of business leaders in our community that care deeply about this institution, that are working to find what's the right way to do this so that we can, make sure NC State stays competitive, but that our student athletes have every opportunity to get a great NIL deal in the Raleigh market. I say all that in that the Raleigh market is a fantastic place for business these days. So there's a lot of folks here, that are exploring those opportunities. And I think NC State is well positioned. But if I said that I've got all the answers right now, I would just be lying to you because I don't believe anybody does.
No, that's certainly true. I mean, would you say that the speculation, I've seen the various folks, suggest that basically every Power 5 school will have some form of a collective, really even here within the next few months. Does that seem like a reasonable prediction to you?
That does seem like a reasonable prediction. I'm not sure they'll use the word collective, but yes. I mean, the reason being is because I think it's going to set a new bar, right? There's going to be a standard of if a student athlete, right, who's considering your school isn't asking the coach the question, like, what is your institution's plan and process for NIL, right? Then that student athlete's probably not asking all the right questions.
Right.
And so very least every football coach, basketball coach, and it's going to make its way down to every sport sooner than later. They at least need to be able to say, yes, we do have a plan. We do have a program. There's a group of people that care about this space that you can reach out to that can let you know what our plan is. And so, yes, I think you're right that sooner or later, everyone will have something.
Yeah, and you alluded to a couple minutes ago the Raleigh market and being business friendly. And we all know with aging fan base and trying to engage the younger generation of fans to become your future boosters, that's going to look different depending on your market. And I think with it being so tech focused in Raleigh, you all certainly have the potential of where we're seeing now this rise of emerging fundraising methods and items like digital assets such as cryptocurrencies and NFTs. Is Wolfpack Club exploring acceptance of any of these items, or what are you seeing in the market right now as far as some of these new innovative ways to raise funds?
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up with the tech focus here. We have had a number of donors that did really, really well in cryptocurrency early on, that were adopters and believer in the currency. So we have had a few donors who've said, hey, I'd like to give you guys a much larger gift. And so from a cryptocurrency standpoint, we've put our toe in that water. It's not a huge portion of our portfolio, but it's certainly something that's out there. The NFT space is a little bit different, Katie. We're not 100% immersed in accepting NFTs, but we are in conversations with some organizations that do NFT work around how can we generate additional funds through NFTs and brandings of some of our current and former student athletes. So I think that will happen sooner than later. But the only thing there is, let's say 10% of our donor population has a decent feel for cryptocurrency. That number is much, much, much smaller that understands an NFT and the value of an NFT. So I think there'd be a lot of donor education still on our part, for that to be a big revenue source. But I do see that being something in the next couple of years that could be a significant revenue source in Raleigh.
Yeah, no, definitely. So with all this, COVID, NIL, other emerging issues, what is the narrative that you look to put forth to your donors, really, as you talk about these things and the need for contributions and kind of where you're going in the athletic world at NC State?
So the thing about NC State and the Wolfpack Club, within the next, decade or so is going to turn 100 years old.
Wow.
So our donor base at NC State, they understand the need to do their part, and they would use those words to do their part to ensure that our student athletes have a world-class experience at a world-class institution. I go back to when COVID hit hot and heavy. We had a program called Preserve the Pack, where our donors could make the choice to donate their ticket money back to the athletic department to keep the lights on. They also, in addition to their ticket money, every single donor that has a scholarship gift with us, to total around $13 or $14 million, every single one of those donors, right? And we're talking 13,000 people. We didn't have a single donor pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, there's no football season this year. There's no fans. I'd like my scholarship gift back. And the reason that they didn't is because our donors, they know very, very well how important what they do, be it $100 or $10,000, that money makes sure that our gymnasts, our football players, our basketball players have the opportunity to get a degree. And so the messaging that, there may not be games or there may not be fans, but they're certainly still going to class and they need your help, rings true with our donor base. I've not seen, and I've been at 3 institutions. I've been at LSU, at Colorado, and NC State. I've not seen a fan base that is as in tune to the student athlete experience and what it means to be a student athlete at NC State as the Wolfpack fan base. This place means the world to them. They're very much engaged. And listen, that's the good and the bad, right? When we lose, you hear it. When we win, they love you. And I'm okay with that, right? I love a passionate fan base, and that's certainly what we have here at NC State.
Well, that's impressive, and obviously is a testament to the fact that there's been great messaging and communication over the years to that fan base and that donor base to make that happen. And that's great. So, well, we call it News and Brews because Katie and I often enjoy either coffee or beer on these. We're recording this one in the morning for our listeners, so we're drinking some coffee here in Gainesville at least. So, Katie, what are you enjoying this morning?
So I'm having some coffee. I like to bring back coffee beans when I travel, just to try different local roasters, similar to what I do with beer, and local brewers. And over Thanksgiving, my family went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it was beautiful. And there's a local roaster there called Cowboy Coffee Company, and I have their Cowboy blend that's a dark or medium dark roast, and it's low acidity, which I like. And as I said last month, I'm learning to embrace black coffee and actually am enjoying that today, surprisingly.
That's great. Ben, are you having something this morning?
I've got 2 answers to that question, because yes, I am having a cup of community coffee with chicory, which is, if you grew up in South Louisiana.
Oh, that's a Louisiana thing there, yeah.
Community coffee is just one of those things. Listen, and when you travel on Southwest now, community coffee is on Southwest Plains. So I've got a K-cup of community coffee right here in my mug. But this evening, right, we have a basketball game tonight, and the local brewery, and I'm not a big craft brew guy. I sort of like mass-produced American beer, but there's a local brewery here right outside of Raleigh that makes a red oak, which is an amber, and that has been my go-to beer since I've made it to Raleigh. So shout out to the.
That's good. Excellent. Well, I'm enjoying some coffee also from a local Gainesville roaster called Afternoon. A great restaurant as well as coffee roaster, and drinking a blend from them. It's really tasty. So.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Cheers and go Pack.
To learn more about the James Moore & Company Collegiate Athletics and Higher Education segments, go to jmco.com. And don't forget to sign up for Insights to get our latest industry updates, news, and events delivered straight to your inbox. You can also follow us on Twitter at JMCO Higher Ed and on LinkedIn for the latest news as the landscape of collegiate athletics and higher education is continually evolving.